is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with some Detroit Lions free agency news. The Detroit Lions have made some more news today as they have signed another free agent. And today we're talking about a former first-round pick. So let's get it started.
The city's been down and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up. And then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome everybody to a video. Glad you guys are here, and we are back with some Detroit Lions free agency news, man. It feels good to be here with a Detroit Lions signing. It's been a minute. The Lions have made us wait a little bit, but we knew free agency's ongoing, so moves can continue to be made. So we just had to be patient, and here we are with another signing. Plus, there's another signing that we're going to talk about. I'm going to split those videos into 2. However, in this video, we're talking about a former first-round pick out of UCF, a cornerback named Mike Hughes. Now, Mike Hughes has spent time with 2 NFL teams. He started off with the Minnesota Vikings. He's a former top pick in 2018 draft. Spent 3 seasons with the Minnesota Vikings. Then he was traded to the Kansas City Chiefs this past season. And once again, you could argue that this is his best season that he's had in the NFL this past year with Kansas City. PFF would definitely back that up. So I couldn't help myself. I knew the news came out a while ago. However, I had to dive into some of the Game Pass here. I saw the move and I was like, okay, hold up. This is a former first-round pick. I definitely have heard of this guy before. I didn't know a ton about him, but I've heard of him. I knew he was a very young player, so I was like, let me just pull on some of the all-22. And I got to be honest, there's some things I'm super excited about within his game. Definitely some questions, and eventually we'll do a film video on this after free agency really starts to slow down. But for now, there are things that I am excited about with Mike Hughes. So let's do a quick little background. Who in the world is Mike Hughes? So as I said, he's a former first-round pick back in 2018 by the Minnesota Vikings. Now, his college career went kind of strange. He started off with North Carolina. However, because of violating team rules, he's basically kicked off the team. There was an assault charge out there. So he was kicked off the team, which led him to going to a JUCO, junior college, where he was an All-American player, back to Division I to play for UCF. And in his final season, his final college career season, which was his only year as a starter at that level, he was one of the top cornerbacks in the nation. Led to him being the pick that he was. It was really only 1 year to look at of experience as starting experience. Also, being that he's only 5'10", 190 pounds. You put those 2 things together, then you take him to the combine. He only runs a 5'4", which is not a bad time by any means. It's a very solid time. It's definitely fast enough, but that number doesn't blow you away. So you take all those things into consideration. He had to ball out because it wasn't like he was playing against the best competition. It's not like he had 4 years of experience. It's not like he blazed by everybody with the speed plus the size combo. None of that. So he had to ball out in his final year of college football at UCF, and that he did. He was outstanding. He was actually one of the best coverage corners in college football on the deep ball, which really sticks out. He allowed like a 20 pass rating on deep shots, which is insane considering his size. You would think that might be an issue. Was not an issue for Mike Hughes whatsoever. So Vikings take him at the end of round 1. They bring him in. However, unfortunately, and we've seen this happen many times, his NFL career was sort of derailed, and now Vikings kind of look at it as a bust. Understandably so, unfortunately, due to injuries. He's missed a ton of time with Minnesota. In a possible 50 games that he could have played with the Minnesota Vikings, he only played 24 games. In his first season, he only played 6 games with Minnesota. 6 games, that's it in his rookie year because of a torn ACL, which took him out for the rest of the season. 2019, he plays in 14 games where he allows a 61% completion percentage and a 91.4 passer rating. However, after the ACL tear, another issue comes up, and that is neck injuries. He has a broken neck at the end of the 2019 season, which is why he missed a couple of games heading into 2020. So he has his broken neck at the end of 2020. I guess he suffered neck injuries twice. There's like 2 major times that it stuck out with neck injuries. So in 2020, they only got to see him for 4 games, which is why probably partially why his stat line is so bad. 75% completion percentage allowed, a 126 passer rating. So for the 3 seasons that he was with Minnesota, unfortunately, he just could not consistently find the field. That's a problem. I believe he's only started 7 games during that span, technically. I heard a Vikings guy say that. It's crazy, all right? He was having struggles finding the field, which leads to making it tough for you to develop. Now, he still could have been kept around on his final year of his rookie deal, which they probably should have done because his past year they had Bashaw Breeland, and let's just say that was not very good. But instead, they decided to trade him away to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs brought him in. They haven't invested a ton at cornerback recently, but they bring him in. They swap late-round picks. They bring him in. It's super cheap. Let's just give him a chance on the final year of his rookie deal. let's just see what he can do. And he plays the most snaps that he's played in the National Football League, allowing a 59% completion percentage, 11.8 yards per completion, a 100.7 passer rating. Pretty good stat line for a cornerback. Pretty good stat line. He only had 2 missed tackles on 47 combined tackles, 4 forced fumbles. That stuck out. We'll talk about that. And he also had 1 interception, allowed 5 passing touchdowns, according to Pro Football Reference. So argue that his second season in 2019 was his best statistical season. He played in 14 games. He only allowed a 91 pass rating, only 3 touchdowns. His completion percentage a little bit higher than this past year, but still pretty low. So you could argue that year as well. I just haven't seen the film from that year. At some point I will, but I haven't seen it yet. So we're really going to focus on what he's done lately, which is with the Chiefs. But even just looking at these stats alone, it kind of sticks out that, okay, when the sample size wasn't ridiculously small, his stats aren't that bad. And it's just nice for him to get out there because he played in every single game. He played in 17 games, started 5 of them. So to not only see him put together a healthy season, which is awesome, but also just that development process to get through a whole year, have this film to look at. And now the Lions are bringing him in reportedly on a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. We'll see where the exact numbers are when it, kind of get the details of it. But the Lions are bringing him in on that deal, kind of a prove it type of deal now off of his rookie contract. And the Lions kind of did this with DJ Chark as well. Something that maybe we expected the Lions to continue to do again. They've been filling out certain positions, based on need to kind of open up the draft. However, it seems like the Lions are getting guys with high upside. They're not just bringing in guys that have injuries and it's like, okay, he's just solid. There's high upside there. He just needs to stay healthy. And that seems to be the case with Mike Hughes. Also, there's another aspect of his game before we dive into the cornerback side, which is special teams. Now, we talk about special teams all the time, especially when you're a cheap free agent deal. A lot of times that can be your way to find the roster, to find playing time early. But for him, coming out of college, out of UCF, he was one of the top returners in college football, which can be very beneficial. Now, he didn't do it like full time, seemingly at the National Football League. I did see him catch some punts. However, he was a dynamic returner back at UCF. One of the top kick returners in college football. He averaged 31.9 yards per kick return in his final season, which is just insane. He also averaged almost 17 yards per punt return in his final season. Incredible stats, super dangerous with the ball in his hands. I'm not saying he'll do that with the Lions, but you definitely got to believe he will compete with the likes of a guy like Godwin, who is not a lock to make the team, but he could compete with Godwin. And if Godwin doesn't make the team, or he could just beat him out for that role, that would be huge. Keep an eye on that. And also the punt returning experience. I would doubt he'd be our starter. I think that will be Khalif Raymond, but having the ability to do it where in a pinch, if you need him, you could throw him back there. That never hurts. Without going super deep into it, there are some things that stick out. First thing, of course, is size. He's a little bit undersized for most cornerbacks. A lot of cornerbacks, teams like it. It's like 6'1", 6'2", 200 plus pounds. Guy can run. Like, that's what teams look for a lot of times. However, while the Lions do like their guys like that, I think they do. I think most teams like to have guys like that. It's like how you would build it on Madden. The Lions have not been against getting guys that necessarily don't have the perfect build. Think about a guy like Jerry Jacobs, 5'11". Now, he weighed a little more, weighed a little bit over 200 pounds. This guy's a little bit on the slimmer side, but he plays with the mentality kind of like Jerry Jacobs does to hit. I'm not going to say he's the hitter that Jacobs is, but he will play very physical, and it shows up in the coverage game as well. And what we saw from Jerry Jacobs is the exact same thing with the All-22. Jerry Jacobs, 1 inch taller, weighs a little bit more, right, according to Pro Football Reference, but also has shorter arms than Mike Hughes. So you think about the size, and you're like, I don't know, it's kind of short, kind of small, but then just think about Jerry Jacobs and what he was able to do last season. Just think about that. Now, there always has been talk with Mike Hughes, well, maybe he's a slot cornerback. However, that's really never been his role in the NFL, from my understanding. Maybe it was a little bit with Minnesota, I didn't really see it, but with Kansas City, it wasn't. Rarely lined up in the slot. He was a wide corner, and at UCF, again, same thing there, wide corner. So while people have questions about his size, I have less questions because I saw what we did with Jerry Jacobs last season, and as long as you play with the right mentality, that can kind of lead you a long way. So that's the first thing. Tough, physical cornerback, and he will tackle. That's the thing. He will tackle. Now, I don't think he's a tackler that a guy like Jerry Jacobs is, but he will tackle. He was only accounted, according to Pro Football Reference, with having 2 missed tackles this past year, which is pretty nice. One thing I would say here is I think sometimes he could wrap up a little bit better, but there is definitely a willingness to tackle. My biggest concern with his tackling as of now is working off of blocks. That's an area where size does show up in length, is screens. That can be an issue. I thought Philly kind of got him with that, is they kind of threw screens at his direction because he can struggle getting off a block, especially against bigger receivers. So it's not that he won't tackle, he can just struggle sometimes disengaging with blocks, which is something to keep in mind versus certain teams, certain matchups. Another thing that does show up with size is specifically in the red zone, but certain matchups. From the games that I watched, you saw it against tight ends, because it wasn't like, they were afraid to line him against a big receiver, because they did, and he was fine usually. But it's when he starts to get to that red area, especially when he gets matched up with a tight end, a lot of times he could be attacked that way, and sometimes he just wouldn't have the size to have a great chance at the point of attack. The tight end can kind of box him out. That is an area of concern. I think that's probably a big part of the reason he allowed 5 touchdowns last season. So that is something to throw out there. By the way, PFF, they loved him last season. If you like PFF, they loved this guy. The grades that they gave him last year, pushing an 80 in pass coverage grade. He had a 70+ run defense grade, which is basically good to great. They graded him out tremendously well. I mean, it does not match up with like the pass rating that he allowed. And again, I think a lot of that is just because of the touchdowns, because his completion percentage being a sub 60%, that's low for corners. That's very low. Yards per completion is pretty darn low. So I think it's just the touchdowns that he's given up, which is really inflating the pass rating that he's allowed, which could be an issue and something you'll have to be aware of in certain matchups, in certain situations, especially once you get closer to the end zone. However, there is a lot of things that I liked. One more concern I will throw out there is speed. He ran a 4.53 coming out of the combine, which is not something that's going to blow you away. I know you shouldn't get too caught up in the combine, but I will say this. I don't think he has great speed. I think he has good speed, but there were times where it did show up. I think certain guys and matchups on crossers, I thought it was something that you could definitely win with. It just wasn't great. It wasn't elite. So I'll throw that out there. That's straight line speed that I'm talking about. However, when you pull in the film, there are a lot of things to like. Sticking in kind of the run game mode, the 4 forced fumbles. Now, immediately I'm thinking Justin Coleman. I guess that's just something that us Lions fans do. We think of forced fumbles. We think of Justin Coleman. That's just me personally when I think of any defensive backs that force a fumble. But he forced 4 fumbles. 2 of them came in the same game against the Raiders. That is something to note. He does have a knack for knocking the football out. Kind of shown that awareness, kind of looked to knock the football out, which is something to keep in mind. Also, there was one where he was beat over the middle, and he kind of came and stuck with the play and knocked it out of his hands. Do have some questions about that part of his game where I have seen some reps where sometimes I feel like he'll play through the whistle, he'll play completely through the play, and I think other times he starts to kind of slow up and give up on the play, which can allow extra completions. Again, I haven't watched a ton of film. I've only watched like 3 games on him. However, it is something to bring up. But for the most part, it was kind of the other way around where I saw him kind of sticking with things, especially once they get into that zone. He sticks with his guy throughout the play. It's just like earlier in drives, especially if it's 3rd and long, he may kind of be a little loose with sticking with this player, which can give up extra completions. Now, when you talk about the coverage aspect, a lot to like. First thing, he is that tough physical player. Honestly, I think you could argue shows up more here than it does in the run game. Tough, physical, and he is definitely willing to battle off the line of scrimmage in press situations, and it really doesn't matter who he's lined up with. He'll do it against big receivers, small receivers. They didn't like try to hide him in certain matchups. I would be aware of this in the red zone, but for the most part, there was no hiding him in certain matchups. They let him match up who was ever on his side, and the thing is that he would play a very physical brand, but the one thing that stuck out was he had to come out as one of the top press corners. Likes to get that, press punch off the line of scrimmage. Very consistent. I've seen guys try this and whiff and miss, and they get beat deep or something like that, and it's just very inconsistent with that strike. I think one guy that comes to mind, Mark Gilbert, when we picked him up from Pittsburgh, it was kind of inconsistent. That's not the case with Mike Hughes at all. Consistently lands those punches off the line of scrimmage to halt routes, to slow down timing, things like that, and really he does a great job of keeping balance while doing it, so he's able to stay in position and really throw off route timing. That's something that stuck out. So for us, if you want a guy that's going to be able to get on the line, be physical, that's man coverage, press bail, whatever it may be, he's going to have the ability to get physical off the line of scrimmage with anybody you throw across from him. And as a lot of people said coming out of draft, he won't back down from anybody. And that's true. That's very true in terms of coverage. But what sticks out in coverage that gives you a lot of excitement is 2 things. First thing to me is the ability to move, to change the direction, the balance. It's the fluidity within his game, the transitions. All of those things kind of make you excited. Now I have to dive into more film to really show you what I'm talking about, but he seems to really like to just close as much airspace. Like, he doesn't like to give up airspace in routes whatsoever. And sometimes he will, but you'll see him constantly working to close that gap as much as possible, which I'm sure is something that's sort of necessary at his size because he doesn't have the longest arm. So if he's giving space, it's going to be hard for him to get back into the play, but he closes that airspace. He'll play sort of physical throughout the route, yet I haven't seen him flagged. I saw a stat that said he had 0 flags. The guy doesn't get flagged, but at the same time, he plays plays physical, but he just closes airspace. We notice out of those transitions, cuts, anything like that, very smooth mover, very smooth change of direction. That sticks out big time, which helps him a ton. And it also shows up in zone, his ability to keep his eyes in the backfield, yet still move with guys out of his peripheral vision. So while he may not have the best top end speed, change of direction, there's going to be a lot of upside there. Also, he does play off of wide receiver tails. While this can get you in trouble because really nuanced receivers will fake these, they'll put their head back and then they'll try to get you to do something, that way they can react to it and play off of it. He does react off a receiver movement that he sees, and this is, I think, a thing that can take his game to the next level going forward as a ball hawk, because we saw at UCF, his final season, he had 4 picks. He can finish the play. I think that's a lot because of his return background. He's got good hands, but it's getting his head turned around consistently. Fantastic job getting his head turned around. Especially young corners, a lot of times you'll see them kind of get locked on their guy and never get their head turned around. We saw Iffy improve on that as the season went on. That's not the case with Mike Hughes. He gets his head turned around all the time, and he's always putting himself in a position to possibly make a play. But he plays off of movement. I gotta believe those eyes get a little wider. You see a receiver stick his head back. He can get his head turned around and still run with the guy. So those movement skills paired with his ability to get his head turned around back to the quarterback and then to finish it with the ball skills, all those things come together and give you a lot of high upside. Now, it's not perfect. Devontae Smith did give him some problems. It wasn't like he was always burning him. He did give him a little bit of problems though, but Devontae Smith is one of the best route runners that I've seen. I mean, he was an outstanding route runner coming out of Bama. And he beat him one time deep because he kind of lost balance towards the end of the route. But he's really trying to close that gap. I think the unfortunate thing for him is that he has a little bit less room for error, right? Because if he gives up too much space, it's going to be really hard for him to get into the play and make a play on the football. So he really needs to close the gap, but he's shown the ability to do so, which is very impressive. So I think there's a ton of upside here. There are limitations. Size does, I think, close the gap a little bit with his speed, but also I think in the red zone is where it shows up. Aside from that, you want to talk about tough, physical, you can't tell this guy you can't match up on him. He's going to take the battle. This is a type of corner that the Lions will get right here. This is the type of corner that they're looking for. Physical, will play the run, and he's going to get after you at the line of scrimmage. That's what this makes me think of. Definitely got some Jerry Jacobs vibes, just in a little bit of a slimmer body. Maybe he bulks up a little bit here, who knows? Got some vibes from Jerry Jacobs, though. And to me, I like the upside as a zone corner to keep his eyes in the backfield to change the direction. But there's no question you could put him in man reps. You just have to be a little bit aware, I think, of matchups. I think you have to be aware of matchups. But as a zone dropping corner, especially cover 3, I like the upside. I really do like the upside, especially with his playmaking skills and his willingness to hit. To me, he's going to fit right in. To me, the biggest thing is going to be health. Is he healthy? Can he stay healthy? If he can stay healthy, this might be the steal of free agency for the Lions. I'm going to be honest. It could end up being that way. Because when you think about what we did with UDFAs and those guys that we had last year, I'm thinking about a former first-round pick here. I mean, it's just injuries, really, that's derailed him. Last season, he's not hurt. PFF loves the guy. They're like, wow, he was outstanding. And you're looking at it, you're like, okay, well, hold up. Hold up. There's a lot here to like. So don't get too caught up in the passer rating allowed, because for me, a lot of it was just red area, certain matchups, he had issues. They would have to slide safeties his ways on tight ends to try to help him out. That way he could just play outside, inside. They can kind of double team. That's something to be aware of. But aside from those situations, the dude is fun to watch. And if he could stay healthy, Lions may have made a real nice signing here. So what's his role? Competition. Okuda's coming off an injury. Jay Jacobs coming off an injury. Who else? The other guy AJ Parker had injuries last year. If he had an injury that missed a lot of time last year. So guys are coming off of injuries. So there's opportunity with all these young pieces. I mean, Jacobs, Iffy, Amani, those guys are all locks next year. AJ's a lock, it feels like. Now, there's always talk about potential to play slot. I'm sure if they needed to, he could probably do it. It's just not really his role. I do like him on the outside. So maybe they tried on the inside. I like him on the outside. Possible returner here, maybe. And, we'll just see how Okuda returns. But with this move, I mean, the Lions don't have to hit the draft. I feel like they don't have to hit the draft. The biggest thing is just how do you feel about his health? But after playing a full season and it's a neck injury, it's an ACL that was years ago, he might be all right. He might be all right. So I love this signing. He's physical. Like I said, he had 20 bench press reps coming out of the combine. For a guy that's 190 pounds, he benched it 20 times. Are you kidding me? 225 20 times? What? I would even make that thing move, man. He's like the size of me, and I would even make it move, man. Come on now. Come on now. That's insane. So Mike Hughes is a Lion. We have another video coming with another free agent signing. Reportedly 1 year, $3.5 million deal. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.